I have just learned that what appears to be a literal dwarf is running for Congress in the great state of Maryland. His name is Adrian Boafo. He is a delegate representing District 23 of Maryland, which is in Prince George's County. I was conducting an interview with Delegate Brian Chisholm last night in the House office building, and we were talking a little bit about some of these ICE bills that are being proposed by the Democratic supermajority in the state of Maryland. And one that is particularly egregious is the Icebreakers Act. It was sponsored by Mr. Boafo, and which, if passed, would basically bar all federal agents who joined ICE during the Trump administration from January 20th, 2025 to the present. Any agent who joined ICE during the administration of Donald J. Trump will be barred if this is passed, from state law enforcement positions. It's clear ideological discrimination, but there's not much to be expected from some of these Democrats who are making these decisions. Let's go into the story a little bit more about the congressional run. So Steny Hoyer, I think that's his name, he was a congressman in District 5, which is the southern half of Maryland, and it includes some Democratic areas because it's very gerrymandered. So it includes the southern half of Maryland, which is very red, and some large blue districts and areas. Hoyer has been a congressman for the past 45 years. He's a relatively moderate Democrat. He's stepping down. He's about 86 or so years old, very old guy, ancient, some people would say. On 45 years in Congress, that is an incredible deal of time. That's almost as old. That's about as old as my parents, actually. So he's been in Congress since my parents were born, which is incredible if you think about it. And he's stepping down, so now there's going to be a very highly contested, crowded primary, a crowded Democratic primary, and a lot of people are predicting that a more progressive, likely a minority candidate will win the election. And it seems like a lot of people have their sights on Delegate Boafo. So let's go into the history of Adrian Boafo a little bit. So in 2019, he was elected to be the youngest mayor pro temp in Bowie history. He was apparently the youngest and the shortest mayor pro temp ever to be elected. So it was a great accomplishment. He was able to stand proud and tall. Well, not too tall, but he's a short guy. He's like 5'2", probably shorter than that actually. It's pretty impressive how tiny this guy is. He's been a delegate for the past 3 or 4 years, something like that, because he's been a delegate for the past 3 or 4 years. He was elected in 2022. He has tried to make a name for himself as one of the most progressive, most far left, most radical people in the House of Delegates. One of his, I've seen his name around. I've seen his name on particular pieces of legislation. He wanted to double the minimum wage in Maryland from $15 an hour to about $25 or $30 an hour. That is where I remember seeing his name. And his name only recently came up in my world because I was covering the ICE bills that are being presented and that are being proposed and introduced by Democratic legislators for this session, because they really want to punch back and go hard on ICE because it's a big political trend, it's a big topic, and they're trying to exploit it for all it's worth and milk it for all it's worth. The Democrats really want to milk ICE as much as they possibly can, and Delegate Boafo is certainly no exception. I was reading a few articles about this because it's going to be a very riveting, engaging, and quite frankly, enthralling race. I'm actually really interested to see what the debates will look like, the primary debates. I hope there will be. And I'm interested to see actually if Boafo brings like a crate or something, or some kind of like stool to stand on, because he's just, again, I'm not exaggerating. This guy is like, he probably comes up to my waist, probably. I mean, he's a really, really tiny guy. I suspect that he might have short man syndrome. That's probably why he's been so radical and so expressive, and he's trying to bring things to the public sphere and make himself seem bigger and more grand, because he has to compensate for his tiny stature. But there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging. I'm personally not a judgmental person, especially when it comes to matters of height. Everyone is equal. Height doesn't matter. Okay, height doesn't matter in politics at all, actually. People who say that, they're wrong. But anyhow, I'm reading a Maryland Matters article. David Carroll, an associate professor of government and politics at the University of Maryland, College Park, said Hoyer was a mainstream Democrat who wanted to remain appealing to centrists. This is kind of like the old Democratic Party, the more moderate branch, the Clinton-esque type of Democrat. which has been totally eviscerated over the course of the past couple decades as the Democratic Party has moved farther and farther to the left. All these kinds of radical far-left propositions. He was more of a moderate centrist type of Democrat, someone like Joe Biden or Clinton or other Democrats from the 90s and the 80s when Hoyer was more popular. But the district has changed, Carroll said, with larger numbers of minority voters, as has Washington, where increased political polarization is driving candidates farther to the right and left. His positioning reflected the environment in which he came up politically, and that was the way it was into his 40s and even early 50s, Carroll said. But I think that his successor is likely to be African American and not likely have centrist leanings. In this case, Delegate Boafo would certainly fit the mold, though I do not see anything about height requirements. Who knows if that is a factor as well? We don't know. I think he's actually might be leading in the polls at the moment for the Democratic primaries, which is incredible to think about, actually. This guy, Adrian Boafo, leading in the Democratic primaries. It's a very crowded race again. A lot of candidates, a lot of competent Democrat candidates, so we'll see what happens. So I want to read a statement that Boafo made. And I'm forgetting where I found this exactly, but I found it. My entire career, I fought for working families to raise wages, create jobs, expand small businesses like the one that sustained my family growing up, and defended the basic civil rights of Marylanders from every background. Our state deserves a fighter in Congress who will deliver for their families. Fighter. He wants to be a fighter in Congress. He wants to punch up, I guess. He's going to be doing some uppercuts when he's fighting the political enemies over in Washington, D.C., because he will certainly not be punching forward or down. That's interesting because he says that he wants to fight for everybody. He believes in civil rights and the rights of every single person. He doesn't want to discriminate against anybody. He wants to fight for the working families of Maryland. And supposedly, I would imagine, the people of the 5th District, the 5th Congressional District, which he hopes to win in November 2026. I find that to be perfectly hypocritical in consideration of another statement which he's made to NBC4 Washington. This is where I found it. I'll read it out for you right now. Boafo says, this legislation, and it's referring to the icebreaker law, which I talked about only a couple minutes ago, would prevent anyone who chose to join ICE after January 20th, 2025, the date of Trump's return to the White House, from serving in law enforcement positions within this Maryland state government. Quote, anyone who joined ICE before the inauguration of Donald Trump, anyone who actually swore the oath to try and protect the border and actually go after violent offenders is not affected. Boafo said, you are welcome to Maryland with open arms. Simultaneously, he said that Maryland did not welcome those who did join after the Trump administration came into power. So if someone had applied to ICE, think about like if someone had applied to ICE in November or October or September of 2024 without considering politics or the presidential administration or whatever, and they just happened to be hired and accepted and recruited into ICE after January 20th. No affiliation to politics, no interest in it. They just want to protect their communities. They want to earn a living for themselves, for their families. ICE provides great job opportunities and benefits and all these kinds of things. And because they happen to do that, because the time span, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, according to Boafo, they will be barred. They will be discriminated against from the state government. They are not welcome in Maryland in law enforcement positions because of that, because they are apparently a threat to the public safety. They cannot be trusted by the public. This is just insane. It's absurd. It's ideological discrimination. It's likely unconstitutional. I really think that Boafo is in over his head. I think he needs to mature a little bit. I think he needs to maybe drink a little bit more milk, get those bones growing possibly, because he might not be seeing things clearly, because his perspective is different from our perspective. We're on a different plane. We see things from a normal person's perspective, whereas Boafo, he has a little bit of a struggle with that, possibly. He may need some stilts. I think that we should raise some money, the Maryland College Republicans, so that he can be on an equal footing with us all, so he can see the light, so he can see things in a rational way. We might be able to help him with that, because it seems like he's not only suffering from TDS, which is of course a brain-eating virus, but also from short man syndrome as well. So I think we need to cut him some slack. We need to be compassionate. We just need to help him grow as a person and literally as well.
Right now, Delegate Boafo is not going to be able to see the light because he's a little bit too small.
So that's really my take on the situation. I honestly just thought it was really, really funny that this guy who is like a midget is running for Congress in the state of Maryland. If he wins, the shortest congressman likely in American history, Maryland will be able to boast that we were able to send someone with a disability to Congress. And that'll be an incredible DEI little virtue signal that the state can use, part of our bragging rights, I suppose, as a state. On a more serious note, Delegate Boafo is totally out of line. This bill needs to be destroyed. It needs to be crushed. It is totally based upon the political dissatisfaction with with one figure. It is solely based on their contempt and their hatred for Donald J. Trump. No other reason. That's the only thing, and it's punishing people for joining an organization just because that organization, that entity happens to be controlled by a particular figure. It's totally ludicrous, it's ridiculous. It is a stupid piece of legislation. Please feel free to donate to the Boafo Growth Fund that we have established. Thank you very much.